to talk to us from BullMoose Marketing. And this is actually a very exciting talk, I think. I think that what Ron will tell us is he has some very exciting things to say. And I think that you'll see that, well, let me just say what these talks are designed to do is this is a data analytics course. And while we may have different approaches to working with data, we all do work with data nonetheless. And so this is the first of our speakers here. And so we're going to hear about how data is actually being used in different types of applications to solve certain types of real world problems here. Now, I think that you'll find that many of the things that in industry and academics here, many of the problems that exist nowadays in computer science have to deal with understanding how to use data to make decisions. And so in these talks, each of them, you'll notice that there are some very specific problems which are being discussed and how data is being used to understand those problems. Now, one other thing that I should mention is that these problems actually amount to making decisions. And so you'll see that when you use data wisely here, you can actually come up with different ways of understanding the situation better so that your decisions are more advanced. Anyway, I don't want to spend too much time here. I'm just too excited about this talk here, Ron. And so welcome to our class here. It's great having you here. This is I guess your third time that you've come to talk to us. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. So yes, thank you. Thanks again for having me back. I'm glad I wasn't terrible the other two times.
not at all. It's wonderful having you here. So I think you can go ahead and you can share the screen. I'll relinquish all responsibility here, and so the floor is yours. All right.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, thanks again for having me, and thanks everybody for taking a few moments here for me to talk about how data is used on the marketing side of things. I don't know how many of you are considering marketing, but data and analytics have become a very, very big deal, particularly in the last 8-9 years. The reason for that is prior to that, the analytics that you could get in the past were a little bit arbitrary, and as technology has advanced and you've got more software tools and everything out there, everything has analytics attached to it, and marketers are very excited because it gives them an opportunity to tangibly show the impact of marketing from a business standpoint and basically prove marketing's value. So with that, I will go ahead and start a presentation here. And let's see, first of all, let's make sure everybody can see it. So yes, start from the beginning. Okay, so real quick, and everybody see the presentation here. We're going to be in a galaxy far, far away. Okay, very good. Thank you, Kobe, for keeping me straight here. Okay, your favorite galaxy. This is going to be great. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and not distract you with my face. And we'll stay here on the presentation. So yeah, so what we're going to talk about is, in the marketing side of things, a lot of data out there. So you need a way in order to contextualize that data to make it valuable. And otherwise, you just got a lot of numbers over there, and what is it really telling you? So there we go. Just a little bit about me, because it's so interesting. I actually grew up here in the area, but like a lot of people, I left as soon as I could. A couple years ago, came back to start a marketing agency because that's insanity. Did a lot of cool stuff in the Army at one point. Learned that basically an English Lit degree is worthless. But it was still fun. Worked at several Fortune 500 companies in the sales and marketing field. I've written a couple books, and they're pretty cheap on Amazon, and also just about as boring as me. I have been in the marketing profession for 14 years, and it's a sure way, it's a straight path to therapy, but it's still fun. Yeah, at a certain point, like I said, came back to the area here to take and start BullMoose Marketing, along with my business partner, Josh Sheritz. And we both really, really like being poor. Yes, I once had a cat that actually put me in a hospital, and that's when I learned that life really is hard. So there you go. Now, so quick introduction about what we're going to take and talk about here in the marketing data side of that. So data by itself, it's pretty much useless. It's just a bunch of numbers, as I said. And the amount of data that exists out there in the marketing side of things is overwhelming. Like I said, you got data just pretty much on every software tool out there. And a lot of it like looks pretty in dashboards and that sort of thing, but you got to really understand what's that data telling you, and you need to have some kind of context behind it in order for it to have any value. Something you probably have talked about is data by itself is kind of its own language. It's communicating different things. And so you need to know how to interpret that language. Otherwise, the data is going to be very confusing for you. And it's also very easy to get lost in it, lost in translation, I guess, unless you've got a really useful way to use that data. And the best way that we can explain how to use data and get value from it is to tell a story with it. So what's that story? So what we're going to take you through is basically an outline of how do you contextualize that so it all makes sense. Like I said, I'm an English literature major, so breaking down stories and applying story methodology to everything, I'm kind of nerdy that way. So what's the story? So first of all, when you got a story, you're going to have a plot outline to basically guide you through the structure of the story itself. So for data, what you need is basically what your plot outline is going to be your marketing goals. What are you trying to do with your marketing? So what are the initiatives, and ultimately the big picture, okay, what's the strategy here? So within that strategy, you're going to have a lot of tactics and stuff that you're implementing to carry that strategy forward. And within those tactics, what you got to look at is what we call key performance indicators, or KPIs. And you're going to have some that are going to be your primary ones. These are going to be ones that are, okay, these directly relate to what we are trying to do with our marketing. And then you're going to have secondary ones. And your secondary KPIs are going to be ones that support the primary ones, or they validate it, or they help you analyze trends that let you know why maybe your primary KPIs are working or why they're not working. And when you've got these defined, when you do your strategy, you want to take and define what your KPIs are going to be, and you want to define what those primary ones are going to be and the secondary ones. Now you're going to have fewer primary ones, and then you're going to probably have a larger set of secondary ones. And what this does when you define this up front is it's going to keep you focused on what you're trying to accomplish, or your plot, your strategy. So your marketing tactics, so just like a plot device, like in a story or a movie, those elements, those actions and circumstances that move your story forward, well, your tactics are going to take and do the same thing. Your tactics are the things that are going to carry your strategy forward. They're going to take and bring it to life. And they're actionable. So now what you do is you've got your strategy, and maybe that's your goal is that you want to take and increase more leads from your website. And the reason you want to do that is it's going to help increase sales revenue from new customers that you didn't have before. So that's just very bland overall kind of strategy. So then your tactics are probably going to be something where you're going to take and drive people to the website where they can fill out forms, or maybe it's an e-commerce site where they're going to take and, buy stuff. So maybe those tactics are going to be, you're going to have ads that you're going to take and run on Facebook, that you're going to target, certain audience segment. So that's an example of a tactic that's going to take and move your strategy forward. So one of the things you got to look at with those tactics are, can those tactics be objectively measured? When we say objectively measured, well, let's sticking with the example here on using, we'll say Facebook advertising. Well, you should be able to see how many people, as you run this ad, are coming to your website from those ads. And then you should be able to see if, say, they're filling out a form or they're making a purchase, how many of those people made a purchase or filled out that form that came from that channel, that Facebook ad. So that would be, an objective measurement for that's going to be tied to that tactic. And then what you also want to take and determine is, like, and I kind of just laid it out there, how do the selected tactics tie to your KPIs? And you're going to look at that both directly and indirectly. So directly, I just gave you an example. So your KPI was, hey, you're looking for conversions, you're looking for new sales on your site. And the direct KPIs are going to be traffic and conversions from your Facebook ad. Now, indirect ones might be, well, you targeted this ad towards maybe a certain demographic, certain age group, or say a certain part of the country or region. And those indirect ones are going to be, you're going to look at and say, hey, listen, for the ideal audience that I'm trying to take and reach here with this ad, it's going to show you that demographic performance. Now you might target, a certain group, but you might see during the performance of it that there's another audience segment that maybe you missed, but you're seeing some conversions from them. Well, that would be, indirectly, would be a KPI that lets you know, okay, well, we get some forensics here to take and work with. That's not the direct KPI, but it's definitely a performance indicator that gives us some kind of understanding of how well that ad is doing. So now you got your strategy or your outline, you got your tactics, your plot device. Now you got to know who are the characters in your story. And believe me, I would plunk down about $100 for a ticket to this movie. I don't know about you guys, but so your story characters are going to be the data tools that you use. Okay. And so just like characters, you're going to have you're going to have different characters. Well, you're going to have different tools that you're going to take and use as part of your story, part of your strategy. These tools are going to have, different methodologies for how they analyze data and how they break it down. And they're also going to have different terminology. And sometimes what you'll see is some overlap in terminology, but it doesn't mean that it's the same thing. So in one data tool, software tool that you're using, the data might be termed, for example, website visitors. Well, then in another data analytics report, we'll say Facebook, they could say that could be website visitors too, but the way that they're measuring those website visitors, the methodology, while the terms are the same, the methodology is different. And so your numbers might not match up exactly. And what those tools should do, and the analytics from them, they should validate your overall marketing goal, or they should tell you either on target or you're off target with your story. So once you have those things defined, once you understand who your characters are, how they're going to be used, and what it is that they're telling you, Now what you got to figure out is that story actually authentic? So this never happened unless you're like a hardcore fan. Then yes, you do know that Jar Jar Binks is the behind everything. He's the master Sith Lord out there. So anyway, I digress. So the next thing in this whole story idea is that you want to find out if that your data tell. So what do we mean? Well, is the data that you're seeing, is it believable? Sometimes you'll see like wild, crazy numbers out there. Well, those wild, crazy numbers, they might look really, really good, but they're way out of whack. So there's something there that's not believable about them. The other thing is fact versus fiction. So a lot of times you might have heard this saying is that, you basically can get numbers to tell you anything that you want. Well, one of the things that you're going to be doing with your data is trying to verify, hey, is this data like factually telling me what I need to know to back up my strategy, and is it aligning to the KPIs, or is there, is this fiction? Is this like what it's telling me really kind of a false positive, so to speak. And then something that's really, really important is that you want to look across all of your data to make sure that you're getting the full context of what that data is telling you, as opposed to like just picking out the things that look really good. And this is a trap that sometimes marketing agencies fall into with their clients, is that they only pull out the sound bites, only the things that look good, and while at the same time they're hiding or minimizing the stuff that's not so good. That's really important that you include that, because otherwise you are only the client, and your strategy is because you don't have the full story, you really can't say that it's successful or not. And so, yeah, like I said, you want to look across your full spectrum of all the data and KPIs that you're getting from all your tools out there, and not just looking at one data set. So ideally, you have some overlap in the tools and analytics that you're looking at. So one set can ideally back up what you're getting from the data from another set of tools. So now that you've got the data from your tools and you're looking across the broad spectrum of everything you've got, now what you got to do is break it down and say, okay, what is my story here? What's it communicating? What is this performance telling me? So this is kind of where I equate to literary criticism. So literary criticism, if you're not familiar with it, like basically, you read like, some famous author's novel, and then you interpret it from different perspectives, whether from a historical context or a psychological context. You're going to do the same thing with all the data that you've got. You're going to analyze it, and then you're going to take and interpret it based on what it is that you're seeing, and you're going to try to be drawing some hypothesis, logically, based on what that performance looks like. So things you're going to be looking for are, not only does it on the direct KPIs, is it, objectively telling you, hey, this is looking pretty good. Other things you're going to be looking for are going to be trends and correlations within the data. So as an example, you might see that there is a high amount of traffic coming to your website from one of the channels, referral channels. So referrals are usually links on other websites that link to your website. Well, maybe one of the trends you're seeing is an increase in referral traffic to your website and conversions. And what you might be able to tell from that is, hey, you know what? If I can have links to my site on other sites out there, then this is a good avenue for me to like really focus on in order to increase sales. And then one thing that you're going to want to do is then, because you're going to have a lot of stuff that you're working with, is then take those trends, those correlations, and that performance, and break that down into something that's very easy to take and understand. It's easy to take and be that isn't as versed in analytics as what maybe you are, and doesn't have the ability to take in or the time to take and break down and do the full analysis and the trends and the correlation. So you want to get it, boil it down to bullet points or summary, and explain what it is that you've determined after your analysis and that. And then one of the last things that you want to take and do is then you want to take and look at, okay, what's the story's sequel? And as you know, some sequels and prequels are better than others. Some are not. So what do we talk about? We're talking about sequels. Well, now what we're looking at is another data set from another period that you want to take and compare against a previous period's worth of data. So, okay, you've got your strategy, you've got your tactics out there, and let's go back to the Facebook ad example. So you've got a lot of traffic coming from a Facebook ad that you put out there, got a lot of conversions on the website or a lot of sales from it. Okay, well, that seems like that's a pretty good tactic. Well, let's tell that story again, or the next iteration of it. So let's say you ran that ad 1 month, and the next month let's run that ad again and see if it continues to be successful. Now you might find that, hey, you know what, running it again, yeah, it's proved to be pretty successful. Or you run it and it's not as successful. Well, okay, now that gets back into like your analysis, like, well, kind of mixed reviews on the whole thing. It went well this month, but not the next month. Well, what you might want to do is then run it again to take and verify, was it a matter of you really hit the nail on the head the first time? Was that kind of lucky? Maybe it was seasonal. Maybe things do better in the fall season early on than they do maybe later on in the fall season. So getting back to like that interpretation and analysis. But what you got to do is compare sets of data against your other sets of data to take and verify if the tactics that you have as part of your strategy are truly effective, or if they're not effective or they're inconsistent, then okay, maybe you need to take and adjust them and be more flexible with your tactics, or maybe those are the wrong tactics. But what you're ultimately trying to hit on is what's going to be effective and what's not effective, and why is it or why is it not. Okay, so normally I do this class in person. Of course, things have changed a little bit, so I may call on you or may not call on you. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through a couple of examples of everything that we just talked about to help better contextualize, this whole story time idea. So what exactly is a story? So I'll give you a little bit, we'll call it the prologue here. So we got a professional services business that they wanted to take and increase awareness with potential clients here in the local area. So the plot or the strategy was that we wanted to improve local search engine optimization performance to increase phone calls that would come into their office. So our primary key performance indicator that we're looking for here is an increase in phone calls. Pretty straightforward. The secondary KPI that we're looking at is an increase in site visits from organic search. So organic search is going to be the channel, the traffic channel to the website that should verify that our tactics that we're going to do as far as local search engine optimization are working. So, like I said, the outline or the tactics here, we're going to be to create an optimized blog content that we then are going to share on social. We're going to make sure that their website and their social media channels and their business directory listing online, those are all optimized using best practices for local search engine optimization. So the direct tactics here that we're talking about is that the optimized content should drive higher organic search performance. And then the indirect side of that is going to be that the clicks on the links and the engagement with the content that we put on social media, that should increase the reach of it. And by increasing the reach, then more people will go to that optimized content, and then that should translate into more awareness with potential customers and more phone calls. So quick check, everybody still with me at this point? Okay, good. All right, thanks. Awesome, good. Always worry that I'm putting people to sleep, especially on Zoom. Okay, so now we got, who are our characters going to be, or what platforms are we going to use to measure these tactics? So one of them is going to be one you probably heard of, Google Analytics. So this is going to tell us what we need to know in terms of like performance for their website. The other one we're going to use is Google My Business. So Google My Business is basically Google's business directory listing for you online. Same thing as like, you know, the yellow pages, but this is just the online version of it that Google creates for your company. And you should, as a company, go out and claim your listing so you've got control over it. So that was one thing that we did as part of the tactics. Then Facebook Insights. So what we're going to be looking for there is engagement on their Facebook page, particularly with the content that we're going to be sharing from their blog on their website. And then to look at how many people were clicking through to that content, we used a tool called Bitly, which basically it takes a URL link and it codes it, and then in its analytics dashboard, it'll tell you how many people have clicked on that link. So those are our characters. So let's start with Google Analytics, and let's look at, in this case, the behavior from the consumers out there that they're trying to take and reach. So we've got two data periods here. The one in blue was going to be the one that's like that was the most current one. And then we compared that on a timeline to the previous several months when we weren't doing any, we weren't incorporating any of these tactics that I mentioned earlier. So what did we find out? Okay, so we started posting blogs in around the middle of August. And when we did a comparison on several key KPIs here, we noticed that from the previous period, when there were no blogs being posted, we increased the number of page views by almost 9%. One period compared to the last. Then on unique page views, so unique page views are people that have never come to the site before and are brand new. So that was a 15% increase. So they got additional awareness from people that hadn't been exposed to their business. there was an increase on the amount of time that they were spending on pages. So that told us that not only were we getting new people there, they actually were interacting with the content by spending more time to take and actually read blog posts that were being written. And to back that up, to verify that, we look at bounce rate. So bounce rate tells us the percentage of traffic that bounces off the site is within 3 seconds of first coming there. So in this case, it's kind of like golf. The lower the score, the better. So the bounce rate in percent, which is, this is a huge change, going from before it was like 60% of their traffic was bouncing off within three seconds. Now you only got like 30% of the total traffic was bouncing off. And then, so this one, you'll note it's in red. It's the percentage that exited off of the page that they originally came to. And we expected this because the pages that we were sharing were a blog post page, not the website itself. And so what that told us was that people were seeing the posts on social media. They would go to that post, and then after that, they would leave the website. So a couple things that tells us. One, we know that, you know, people were coming to those pages, to those individual blog posts. But the downside of it is that we would hope that they would go on to maybe the contact page or a page where they could get more information instead of just exit directly off the very first page that they went to. So this is a little bit of a negative in that people were just reading the blog post, but they weren't doing anything else afterwards. So when we said what was important to us was that we wanted to increase the amount of traffic that was coming from people who were searching for businesses that offered what, you know, this business offered. And if they're searching for them, then we want to increase the amount of those people that are actually coming to this company site. So in that comparison of the two periods there, we did increase the amount of people coming from organic search by almost 18% from, you know, the period when we started implementing the tactics versus the period when there weren't any tactics. And then an added bump to that was an increase in traffic coming from social media, which we would look at as like a secondary KPI because there was more engagement. We were posting more on their Facebook page, so that became an additional source of traffic that we saw an increase in. So now we go over to Google My Business. So Google Analytics gives you, you know, a set of numbers. Google My Business, your business directory listing within Google, gives you analytics as well. And so when we looked at one period versus the next, we found that in July versus June, in August versus July, so there was a 7% increase in people who were looking for directions to this business. There was 1.3% increase in people who visited this company's website. Whoops, jumped ahead there. But the biggest thing, if you remember, our primary KPI was we were looking for an increase in phone calls. And we definitely saw an increase, a 13% increase in the number of people who called when they would type in, you know, XX company, you know, or they would type in, you know, this type of business in my area. Well, it would take them to the business directory, and then people would click on the phone number, the phone icon, and dial in. So these are good things. As a secondary KPI, this breaks down in Google My Business the people that typed in directly the name of the business that in this case. So we had about a quarter of them actually typed in the name of the business, but 3/4 of them actually were looking for somebody that was within that business category or did the same thing that this business did. And so the fact that they had so many people coming to them that were looking for somebody within that category told us that from an awareness standpoint, they were getting more people who didn't know about them, but were looking for the services that they offered. So that means we would be what we call brand awareness out there for them. So these are good things too. So phone calls. So we were able to take and track the number of phone calls that they got. And what this did is it aggregated those calls and broke them down by the days of the week, as you can see here. And so we think about like trends and that sort of thing, you know, what is this telling us? Well, a lot of people are looking for this company's services on Tuesday. That's, you know, sticks out there. But one thing that they didn't realize is that they had people calling them on Saturdays, and it's a small number, but still enough. You don't know if you're like losing business. So their offices aren't open on Saturdays. So what they did to make sure that they didn't miss this potential business is they implemented a call service. So one of the things, you know, as we're analyzing the data and we see that, hey, there's this potential opportunity or there's this trend going on. Well, you know, that created an additional potential for revenue by making a decision to take and implement a call service. So again, kind of some secondary supporting KPIs. What was the trending? So, you know, the overall trend line was showing that there was an increase in phone calls, again, supporting our, you know, direct or our primary KPI of phone calls. We did a correlation of website visits to calls, and the website visits are in green, the calls in blue. So one of the things that we could, you know, tell by this is that they may have gone to the website first to take and check out this company to verify that this company, you know, did, you know, what it was that they were looking for, or offered the services that they were looking for, or, you know, looking at the website, did these guys look legit? You know, as a result, you know, that we saw a high correlation between the visits to the website and then people calling, you know, after going to the website there. And then request for directions. So, you know, what we were logically deducing from this is that if people were looking for the directions, then they are going to take and show up to the office for a visit. So one of the things that they were having a problem with that I didn't mention in here was that people would make appointments, but then they wouldn't show up. Well, one of the things that we looked at is like, okay, well, let's see how many people, when they go in and search for your company name, then, you know, go to get directions so they, you know how to get there and park and everything else. And over time, we saw a higher correlation or a higher trend of people asking for directions. And they did, you know, confirm to us that, yeah, hey, guess what? A lot of people that are making the appointments, we have more people that have made appointments and have kept those appointments than what we were having in the past. So, you know, another good thing and another example of, you know, analyzing the data and making some correlations there. So I mentioned, okay, Bitly, and looking at, you know, how many people are actually clicking on the links that we put out on social media to these blog posts. And so, you know, we've got one here that we looked at and that went out, and, you know, 22 people clicked on it and went to the website. Now, when we took and compared this to what Facebook analytics were telling us, and also what Google Analytics were telling us in terms of the amount of traffic that was coming from Facebook in this case. And yes, we did see a correlation in terms of the number of people that were clicking on it, and a trend upward in the number of people that were coming from Facebook to those blog posts. Now, Facebook engagement. So we said we were posting stuff on Facebook. They click on the link, they come to the website. I remember we were talking about like fact and fiction and things being believable. Well, when we go across here and say, wow, total page visits, you know, if you can see that, you know, went up like over 700%, that's awesome. Page previews, like they went up, you know, 500%. People reached, okay, you know, over 5,000% increase. Wow, these are like great numbers. Well, the fiction part of it is, yeah, these numbers are great. The fact part of it is that they had a Facebook page. They hardly did anything with it. Basically, they kind of hit rock bottom and started digging. So any amount of content that you would post on their Facebook page, you know, after that was going to be an improvement, just almost automatically. So while we look at these percentages and say, hey, they're green and they're big, that's great. When we look at like raw numbers of like page likes, well, you know, over this period, they only got 2 additional page likes. I think one of them was, you know, one of the owner's mothers, and the other one might have been, you know, somebody here at the agency. That's, you know, looking across the spectrum of things here, the real story is that, hey, you know what, you haven't done anything, and anything that we do is going to look like an improvement. So in this case, what's important is that we compare this month's data to the sequel, you know, part 2, what's the data look like in that next sequel, and what's the data look like in the next one in your, like, we'll call it trilogy. Are we continuing to see improvements and increases? And if we are, well, then that's telling us we're headed in the right direction. It's verifying that, you know, this is working. So then, okay, then Facebook engagement. So let's break this down and look at some of the posts and stuff that were actually being put on Facebook. What kind of engagement are we getting from that? Well, one of the things that we can see is that one of the blog posts in there had a pretty high reach, 187 people, and also had, you know, some very high engagement around it. And so that sticks out noticeably from the other posts that are on here. Well, why was that? So what we did is we dug into it, and you can break this down, and we found that there was somebody that was a former client of this business, and had seen the blog post that was posted on social media, and they went ahead and shared it out with all of their friends. Well, because they shared it and their friends engaged with it, then you started to have a snowball effect. So one thing that told us is that, hey, you know what, we can have an additional tactic of where we could set up a newsletter, an email newsletter, and we could share these articles with past customers and encourage them to take and share them with people they might know that would find that content interesting. So just an example of, you know, drilling down in to analyze, again, trends and interpret them into, you know, what are we finding out and what is that telling us? So just quick review here. This is where y'all be clicking. Could you see where there were clear goals, you know, and a clear strategy? Anybody not see that? Okay, I lost everybody. Click over here. Okay, good, very good. You can see it. Okay, I'm gonna leave this over here so I can get there quicker. Do you think that the tactics were relevant, and did they look like they were measurable? Okay, we got one yes. We got it. Good. Okay. Do you think that we were using the right analytics here? Do you think there was maybe any gaps or something maybe we missed? The analytics were sufficient. Thank you, Kobe. Could you tell where it was that we were using facts? You know, we could identify facts and we were getting a full context to verify the data sets. Did anybody miss that or not see that? Okay. And could you see where we were, you know, looking for, and it could identify some clear trends? Yeah, you could, you know, you could definitely see that. And then should we probably continue down this road of collecting the data this way with these tools? Or do you think like there should be any kind of change? Should we try to verify anything else? Okay. So, very good. Yeah, you caught on quick that the answer to everything here is yes. I am going to stop sharing the screen here and then put my face back on. And at this point, open it up to anybody that's got any questions or anything that like didn't understand or want me to take and explain a little bit more on.
Well, maybe I'll go first if I may there. One question I was going to ask is, for instance, when you, in your acquisitions here, when you notice that there's like, you're getting many more referrals to your website, is that an indication that perhaps your name is becoming more, or the name of the company is becoming more kind of a house-friendly term here? I mean, can you use that in a business sense here, or is that just something that happens this month, but next month it may not be the same?
Yeah, you know, it kind of depends. So if we were to say in a scenario we were doing affiliate marketing, so I use a real client. They made ceramic cookware, and they relied on affiliates. So bloggers out there that talked about healthy living and cooking and that sort of thing. Or then also like there was like coupon sites, you know, that promoted specific products and that. They noticed that for them, having a lot of referral traffic that converted into sales confirmed to them that, hey, this is a good tactic to have, you know, this affiliate program. And then they could drill down and they could see which affiliates were getting more traffic and more sales. For them, then, yeah, that meant that like definitely getting more awareness. And then, you know, they had certain affiliates that were outperforming others. So they had people that were like being more of an advocate for them. So they were able to take and, you know, determine, hey, let's like reward those affiliates more. Another scenario could be, yeah, you are becoming like, you are getting like more awareness because people are like, hey, check out this site, check out this site. And so, yeah, you get to, you know, you get more people that are like sharing that around and they want to put it on their website. So yeah, you know, that would be exactly right. Let's see, anything else? Anybody, any questions about marketing in general? Or marketing careers? I will tell you that like if data is your thing, the marketing data analytics is basically a career unto itself. In fact, actually, I think one of your former students, Nicole Loma, she is actually working for us right now, and she's helping us shape our data analytics and analysis for our clients, and she's helping us build out that program right now.
That's great. I'm actually glad to hear that. She was an excellent student.
Yeah, yeah, we love her.
All my students are excellent.
Yeah. No favoritism.
If anyone has any questions, please just unmute and volunteer your questions. I mean, this is a discussion forum here, and we're in presence of greatness here, and so please ask.
I'm a
say
little
it's
better
true.
than, I was gonna say I'm a little better than average, and that's as far as it goes. So
Too modest, too modest.
I have a quick question. So,
yeah, go ahead, Alex.
So do you guys ever use hypothesis testing at all when it comes to looking for different ways to market your or to come up with different marketing strategies at all, or
That is
anything
a
of that
yeah.
nature?
That's an excellent question. That's a very, very good question. So, digital advertising, you don't want to take and just jump right in and say, hey, let's throw $100,000 at the this ad set and let's see how it does, because there's a lot of money there. So what you want to do is, you want to take in, hey, when we build out strategies, we say, okay, this looks like this is going to be your best target demographic. Here's the targeting that you want to take and use. Let's do a test campaign and see how that runs. We usually will have like benchmarks to say that will determine whether it's successful or not. And then, then it gets into kind of what I was talking about with like the sequel into things. Well, if it did well, like, okay, well, let's expand it and see if that does well with a larger market. Or maybe it does, well with a different market. But the bigger the campaigns, the bigger the clients, the bigger the reach that they're trying to have, then that gets even more complex with what we would call like A/B testing. So we'll test one ad promoting a product, and then a different ad that maybe we tweak that's promoting the same product, and we sit there and we'll compare performance against the two of them. And now it's like gets so fancy that like you can, let's say ad A and ad B actually is outperforming A. Some of these platforms will automatically pull off ad A and let ad B grow through AI algorithms and that sort of thing. So there's a couple different ways of doing that. So excellent question. Awkward silence.
Well, maybe I'll break the silence here while my class is coming up with their questions here. But I wanted to ask you, so getting back to the Facebook ads, when you noticed that a lot of people were looking at Facebook ads and then click on your website that you mentioned there, does that necessarily mean that more ads, more clicks, or is there a kind of a cap to how much opportunity that you can get? Or how do you know when you've put too much money into your ads from your data?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So you kind of don't know until you get into that, like that sequeling end of things, because you do get to a point where there's like a point of diminishing returns. So I'll give you an example that's going on right now. So we've got one client, and they're in the agri-entertainment industry, which that's basically pumpkin farms and hay rides, and they basically are kind of like a farm but an amusement park. And they have been running ads for their opening day and for their season here for a while now. And actually, they've had to do, like, their season starts like actually this weekend, but because of COVID, they knew that they were going to be limited in the number of people that they could have there. They knew they were going to take and lose revenue. So they started running ads for other promotions. So they went, Mother's Day, come pick flowers, and you can come get cider and donuts one weekend and a drive-through. Well, they basically, their ads that we were putting out for them were hitting the same demographic and the same markets as the ones that they would want for their opening day. And it actually was working against them. At first, they were getting a lot of traffic and a lot of conversions, and people were showing up and taking advantage of those specials in the late spring and early summer. But because we were going after that same audience when it came into their opening weekend, there was a huge trail off because basically these people were sick of looking at those ads and getting bombarded with them all the time. So yeah, that's a case where in looking at that trend over time, it worked great at the beginning, but right now it's kind of working against them. So we have to like go back and rethink, okay, what ads are we going to put out there? How do we make it exciting again and get people to engage with it? So yeah, good question. Anybody else? Unmuted himself and then mute.
Oh, I guess I have another question. I didn't know when to ask it, but what role has the R programming language played in your line of work?
Programming language. That's a really good one. I got to think there for a second. The one thing that probably comes to mind is when you get to the user experience side of things. If your user experience is clunky, let's say you're using mobile advertising or a mobile app, which you can definitely use that as a marketing tactic. If the user interface is very clunky or it's very hard to take and find things, then that could definitely come into play as far as like it could be a great offer, great promotion, great product. But if the actual experience that's been coded in the design and everything else isn't effective, then you kind of killed it for yourself. So that would be the first thing that would come to mind. I guess in functionality, I guess that goes with user experience and all of that. So another one would be, but I guess this counts as if you get some inconsistency in your coding and something doesn't work. If something's broke, then like it just takes one time and people are gone. So if your website's broke, they're never going to come back again. If your app's broke, it's never going to come, they're never going to use it again. If you're doing, there's a lot of people as a marketing tactic that give away, a free version of their software, or they let you use use it for like 2 weeks. Well, if it's not working correctly, then you've lost them. That your product is shot. So I guess that would be a couple things that I could think of off the top of my head. But again, another good question.
So depending on the website, it takes in different personal information, personal data, like your social security and phone number and everything else associated with those types of things. So how does that how does that distinction affect how people who hold that data, like how does that affect how they take initiatives or whatnot to protect those?
So yeah, I was waiting for somebody to come up with the data privacy side of things. So this is, data privacy is going to become, so philosophically, we talk about like all the data that marketers have access to, and there are ethical uses of data and unethical uses of data, which, you've been paying attention to the headlines over the last, 4 years. You've seen lots of examples of the unethical use of data, say for political advertising, or one that everybody laughs about, but it's true, is you search for something on Google, and then 20 minutes later you're seeing an ad for it on Facebook. And so there's a debate about like how much data collection is too intrusive, and what's the right balance. And that's going to be that's tough. And then also, where is that data going to be stored at? So right now there are regulations that so Europe has like very strict standards in place in terms of not just what data marketers can collect, but how they collect it. So if on a broad scale, so we talk about like what we call opt-in marketing. So opt-in means that's their information. So I'm sure like at some point you probably filled out a form, put in your email and your phone number in order to take and get some sort of information or get access to something. Well, you've willingly, and now you'll notice that there's usually a box somewhere at the bottom that says, I understand that I'm going to take and get marketing materials by filling out this form, or I don't want marketing material being sent to me. That's an example of opt-in marketing, but at the same time, it's also an example of how, from a regulatory standpoint, it's forcing marketers, and I believe rightfully so, to be more ethical about their marketing and to take and give consumers more choice in how they're being marketed to. When you're thinking about like collecting that data, you got to think through some of that ethical standpoint. How much data is too much data, and the other part of it is what data are we collecting? What data is being collected on you that you don't know about? So Facebook is a prime example, where every time there's some kind of engagement that you're having on Facebook, Facebook's pulling all that data in, and they're using algorithms. And then now you get into like, data being the driver for, artificial intelligence, which artificial intelligence is like, boom, huge, and it's not going to take and slow down, but it all runs off of data. Then, Facebook was taking that data, and then they were selling it off to different marketing, other platforms, and other channels. Then they would take that data unbeknownst to you, and they were using that to take and market to you. And so again, that's that stuff that from a regulatory standpoint that they're clamping down on. So and then the security of that data. So right now, Google is not supposed to be storing data from people in the United States. They're not supposed to be storing that data in Europe, and vice versa. They're not supposed to be, data that they collect from people in Europe. They're not supposed to be storing that in servers here in the United States. So over time, if you're in the space, and particularly AI, how that data is collected, where it's stored, and the security of it, those are all going to be like huge things that you're going to be really paying attention to, if you're going to be in those fields. So yeah, good question. A lot to that one. A lot of dimensions. So yeah, all very, very good questions. You guys are really thinking there.
I had a question, if that's okay. I guess it's a more personal question. I was going to ask you what the most rewarding part of your journey was, or what you would consider the turning point of your journey. Wow.
Okay, that's heavy. But I'm very glad to answer that. So I've been lucky to have a lot of experiences. I think one of the biggest things that I've learned, and I'm a slow learner, so it took me until I was about 45 to figure this out. On paper, if I were to whip out a resume and, you'd say, oh, wow, these guys have been really successful. But At the same time, I never really was happy, which sounds crazy. And I've, been lucky to make, would look, a lot of money and everything else and all these things that externally look like success. But what I didn't know was driving that anger was a fear that I couldn't make it on my own. I couldn't be an entrepreneur. And so I was secretly angry, not like punching anybody angry, but like frustrated because I was making money for somebody else. But I was staying in that rut because I was afraid that I wasn't smart enough to have my own business. And it's partially true. I'm not smart enough. That's why I got a business partner that we complement each other really well. But he's like 32. So that makes him smarter than me. He figured this out. I mean, that was the biggest turning point that I can think of in my journey, is that if there's something that like you, that's, you want to do, you're going to know in your gut, like it's always going to be like churning at you, like there's something out there. And don't be afraid to go out on your own and listen to your gut and don't give in to your fears. So once I did that, I have never been poorer, but never been happier than I am now, except for when I was in college. So yeah, thank you for that.
Well, if there's no more questions, maybe we should end it here and get you off the hot seat there if you're interested. But perhaps you could leave your email, or you could tell us your email, or maybe you could put your email address into the chat. And so that, I mean, I always think that maybe there are no questions now, but there could be subsequent questions later on. And so if anyone does have any questions, perhaps you could address them to Ron Mattocks here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to, I just went ahead and put it, put it in the chat. See if I can put it to everybody. Everyone, I know technology. I will put it here in the chat, and I am, available. I might not get back to you like in the next 5 minutes, but I am glad to talk. I'm glad to, if anybody ever wants to take and make a trip to our office. We're actually, well, at least for another month, we're located in the old middle school building that's across from the Meadville Public Library, co-located with the Foundry Co-work. So anybody's welcome to make an appointment if they want to come down and talk about anything. Actually, I teach seminars and a couple other classes on marketing with Allegheny. So yeah, love to take and talk to students.
Can you tell us more about that marketing class that you have? That might be an interesting class to hear about.
Well, it's kind of getting a little bit revamped right now. So, but the general structure of it is that what we do is it's an internship, and then the first part of the internship usually is the semester, and what we do is we actually have, it's a very, very structured, almost classroom, but also then hands-on, where we teach how to take and put together a marketing strategy. And it actually has been, even though it was under comm arts, it was open. Actually, over half the people who've been through it have been computer science majors, so about half and half. And we teach you how to put together a marketing strategy. We try to cater it towards, kind of your interests. So, there's definitely, you're interested in analytics, you're interested in software applications and marketing technology. We, try to cater it that way. And then after that, then you're eligible to take and work as a, well, it's a internship, but we pay you as like an independent contractor to actually work on client work in that. So this fall we didn't have it because they're looking at making a switch from comm arts to the economics department. But keep an eye out if anybody's interested in that when it comes time to take and sign up for classes in the spring. to, you know, if you're interested, and if you got more questions about it, you know, feel free to reach out to me.
Okay, well, I think that maybe we should leave it here. We're getting to the end of our lab here, but thank you very, very much for coming to share with us your wealth of knowledge here. I think this is, every time you come here, I have to say this, I love this presentation. I love the, I have to ask
Shucks.
you, where do you,
I'm blushing.
where do you come up with the graphics for your slides? I mean, those are, I was actually thinking that was a real movie. Then when I first saw it, we said $100, and I thought, where can I see that movie? Like,
yeah, being a huge nerd, I just like scour the internet for all the best stuff. So, you know, because I have endless amounts of copious free time. So.
But anyway, it's perfect though. That was a very interesting talk. I really enjoyed that one. And thank you very, very much for coming. I know you're very, very busy, and you had to cut out a bunch of other time to come here today. And so it's been a privilege to listen to you. Thank you. All right, everyone. So that is the lab.
Thank
here.
you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. There's nothing due. I will see everybody next week. Take care. Thank you.
Have a good weekend.